Yeah. Spence. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going?
We are going to another episode of HardFoul Radio. This is the show that values time. I value mine, so you should value yours. Let's get it started. So, I didn't discuss this yesterday, but it definitely deserves to be talked about. And that is Jalen Brunson just did something potentially really big. And that is Jalen Brunson signed a contract that is well below the value of what a quote-unquote superstar for his team would ever sign. There's a lot that goes into contracts. I don't try to count other guys' money. I believe every athlete, because it is such a short career span, should attempt to get as much money as they possibly can. And so there's going to be people that are going to argue, oh, what he did was bad. And then there's going to be people that are going to argue that what he did was good. Most of them, if you ask, are probably Knicks fans. And that's fine. But here's the reality that reality is a big thing. I believe you have to live in reality. And this is another one of those live in reality things. And this applies to almost anything when someone does something contradictory to the norm. And that is, we all want to be the first person to jump out and say, that changed the game. That changed it. That was the sign. When in reality, we don't really know the impact of what Jalen Brunson did or what anybody does until the next time. Think about this. If I do something or you do something and it is totally different than what everybody else is doing, we could be a one-time occurrence that is just truly lost to history. No one's ever going to talk about it again. No one's ever going to think about it again. It happened once and boom, it was over. Jalen Brunson is not the first guy to take less than max value or appropriate value for what he is providing for his sports team or his sports franchise. But, and this is the New York effect, if this leads to other guys doing it, then it's impactful. So that's why I didn't really want to talk about it yesterday, because I felt like everyone was coming with the same opinions and the same thoughts and the same topics yesterday, which is, oh my gosh, look how good this is for New York. They have all this money now. They'll be able to do this, that, and the third. And it's like, yeah, but if Mikal Bridges decides to say, well, I'm not taking less than what I feel I deserve, then it doesn't really matter that much that Jalen Brunson took less than he deserved. OG Anunoby took the max that he got, so it clearly didn't have an impact prior to this. You know, he said, I want to get paid. New York, please pay me what I'm worth, or I'm going to go test the market and get what I'm worth somewhere else. But then Mikal Bridges came out today, and the report is he's willing to take less to keep this Villanova-esque core plus OG Anunoby together. Cool. Now we have something. Stuff isn't impactful or culture changing or revolutionary until somebody else also does it or somebody else also follows in your footsteps. This is true in sports. This is true in music. This is just true for human history. Somebody, look at all music genres. You go back to blues, classical, jazz, dance, swing, rock, rap, hip-hop. They're not revolutionary unless someone else does it. There's a million different sounds and a million different notes and a million different things that have been done musically. But the reason why genres were created is because somebody else heard that and wanted to replicate that and decided to join you in making this new sound. That's what made it a genre. That's what made it culture shifting. That's what made it revolutionary. So if Jalen Brunson took this contract, and we already know OG signed for essentially the max of what he was able to get, and if Bridges also decided, well, I'm still going to sign for the max. Thanks, Jalen, for what you did, but I'm still going to get my money, which he's 1,000% entitled to do, then this would have been, by the end of his career, it would have been a story in New York for about a week. It would have been a story across the nation for about 2 days. But if more guys decide to do this, then you got something. Now, the big question is going to be, is Jalen Brunson good enough to do this? This is why agents always get funny about this stuff, is like, well, you shouldn't tell your guy to make less, because if your guy is better than my guy that I'm representing, as soon as I go into these owners meetings and I'm like, hey, I think my guy deserves 4 for 150 or what's a max now, 4 for 200, something like that. You're going to look at you and go, well, so-and-so, in this case, Jalen Brunson, just signed for 4 for 156. So your guy I don't think is as good as Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson just got the Knicks to the Eastern Conference Finals, just had a career year, had all these moments, was on TV, has been doing all this stuff in the community, for the team, for the franchise. Why would I pay your guy when he's not as good as this other guy who took less? Now, again, is Jalen Brunson good enough? And this year's going to tell you a lot. If there's obvious answers, right? If LeBron did this during his prime, it would be revolutionary almost off the bat, because everybody would have to fall in line with LeBron. If when Shaq got his mega deal, you would have to fall in line, because the reality is you're not Shaq, you're not LeBron. But these next set of guys, those are all-time greats. But the next set of guys who are either legitimate superstars and or really, really, really good players on teams with other really, really good players, and you just happen to be slightly better, so you are perceived as the superstar, which is what I consider Jalen Brunson to be, is this going to change stuff? Now, it might only change stuff for his own team at the moment. But that's fine. That's a start. Because it's clearly not changing things league-wide, because even prior to this happening, the Celtics, who just won the championship, they said, throw the bag at everybody, get everybody paid. Brown's paid, Tatum's paid, White's paid, Drew Holiday got an extension already, Porzingis got paid, and then we're going to sell the team and let somebody else pay for it. And if you've been following any NBA media this offseason, there's been all this conversation about the second apron and this, that, and the third, and all these different tax brackets. Like, and to a regular fan, we just don't care. You, as a regular fan, you do not actually care if the billionaire owner has to pay $5, $10, $20, $30 million extra in whatever luxury tax or apron. And like I said, I wasn't going to talk about this originally, because up to this point, it had not mattered. But what if the Knicks go on a deep playoff run again? And what if not only Bridges resigns for a less than market value contract, and what if that actually opens them up as more and more money becomes available? And we've all seen, if you've been paying attention to the NBA, we've all seen these theoretical contracts. Luka's going to sign for 60, 70 million. Wembanyama's going to sign for a country. Like, we've seen these huge numbers getting thrown out there. But what if the Knicks do the Celtics model of, we're going to have 6, 7 guys, but it's actually sustainable because 4 or 5 of them took less than market value, and that creates a whole other all-star, slightly better above caliber player? What if the Knicks get a title in 2 to 3 years? Because now you're going to have everybody looking around going, say, like, look, and it's you're going to see it. You're going to see the narrative. You can't win if a guy's making $60 million, $70 million, etc. We've seen it happen, and to be clear here, I want to make sure I say this correctly. It's not just how great you are, but success matters. Because guys who were way better than Jalen Brunson have also done this and done this longer. Can I introduce you to Tim Duncan? 5-time champion, greatest power forward ever, one of the best players ever played the game of basketball, routinely took less. And what happened? The Spurs were while over the course of 20 years, they basically ran parallel to the Patriots dynasty, 5 championships, whole bunch of deep playoff runs, constant success, all these 20-win seasons, because Tim never said, yo, empty the bank and pay me everything and have room for everybody else. This is why he had not only Parker and Ginobili, but they were able to get Kawhi that second contract. They were able to pay X amount of role players. Like the Spurs, it wasn't just a matter of their coaching staff being good. They always had a roster that was 8, 9 deep because they could pay a little bit more for the 7th, 8th, and 9th guy on the roster versus a team like the Lakers or a team like the Heat when they were paying D-Wade, Shaq, when the Lakers were playing Kobe, Odom. Like, they were paying top end for their top end stars, and they deserved it. But the Spurs were consistently getting there because Tim Duncan was taking less. Can I introduce you to Tom Brady? I've been on this for years. Who's going to be the first quarterback to take the Brady-esque model? And while Mahomes kind of did it, like Mahomes has the largest contract in NFL history, but it's spread out so far. He's never going to be the highest earner. I think for the totality of the contract, only 1 year he was the highest earner in the league. But he got it spread out, this super unique contract, and he's going to be able to afford, that's the difference in the Chiefs being able to afford a third good contract on a lineman or a third good contract on a defensive player. So other guys who have been great have done this. Other guys who've had success have done this. But remember, it does not matter if you do something. It is not revolutionary or game-changing or culture-shifting until the second person does it too. And then you keep going down the line, and the second person does it, and the third person does it, and the fourth person does it. So Mikal Bridges saying, or the story being, hey, he'll take less to stay with New York and to stay with the Villanova Knicks. That's something. And I'm not saying it's going to go league-wide, but let's see what the Knicks do this year. Are probably going to be one of the top 2 to 3 teams in the East, and that's without the Embiid or the Giannis or the Jason Tatum, the true quote-unquote clear top 5 superstar. Let's see. It's going to be interesting, man. I want to transition from the NBA over to the NFL to another guy who's also very well paid. Another guy also from the tri-state area. So, the NFL, it's like I said, we were talking about this a little bit yesterday too. The executives all came out and, not only ranked the players, but in this game the NFL plays with the media, they also say, hey, don't just rank the guys or rank whoever you think's the best head coach or rank who's the best quarterback. We also need some quotes because we need to put some stuff out there because this is marketing. It's a business. We need people talking about us. That keeps us relevant. That keeps people going to NFL.com and buying jerseys, all this whole stuff, right? It's all a part of the business, all a part of the game. Someone said, anonymous executive, because you got to keep it anonymous because otherwise guys won't talk. When they're anonymous, they give you good quotes. Josh Allen is really overrated. He makes a lot of mistakes. I think he's the most overrated player in the league. Anonymous executive. I think right now in the NFL, and we're going to do later in the show, I'm going to do top 10 quarterback situations. And I want to clarify, it's top 10 quarterback situations because in the NFL right now, more so maybe than ever, maybe more so than ever before, there is a clear gap. And it's between one guy and everybody else. Mahomes and whoever you think is the second best quarterback, there's a gap. Whether you think it's Mahomes Burrow, Mahomes Allen, Mahomes Lamar, you have to acknowledge, I talked to Tony, love him. He is a huge Ravens fan his whole life. He knows there's a gap, and he loves Lamar. Lamar's a 2-time MVP, and he knows there's a gap between him and Mahomes. Burrow revolutionized the Cincinnati Bengals franchise. There's a reason why they had the number 1 overall pick. It's a reason why they've been a losing franchise most of their history. Boom, within 2 years, and really only one healthy one, boom, they're in a Super Bowl. And Josh Allen, who this is how you know it's a gap, because we gave Mahomes so much credit because last year felt like, wow, how did you win the Super Bowl when that was his down year? Last year was Josh Allen's down year. and he still won the AFC East for the 4th straight year and has still represented more touchdowns than any player in the NFL the last 4 years. That includes Mahomes. But because there's such a gap, Mahomes has a down year, wins a Super Bowl. Allen has a down year, wins his division. Any other time in NFL history, if your star quarterback had a clear month-plus stretch of bad football, a bad opening week, we all saw it against the Jets, 3 interceptions. It's crazy to think. Aaron Rodgers got a win last year. And his down year, he won his division. That's an accomplishment in any other year except the year the best guy wins a Super Bowl on his down year. So there's a gap for the first time ever. Like, it's drastic. We just are not that far removed from watching the greatest player in the history of football, Tom Brady. And even Brady, during his best, there was not a gap like this. There was not this much of a gap between him and Peyton, or him and prime Drew Brees, or him and Aaron Rodgers. There just wasn't. Mahomes has created such a gap that a guy like Josh Allen, who on his down year wins his division, it's almost irrelevant because Mahomes' down year, he got a Super Bowl. Think about that. And here's my other problem, is all these other executives that say, so let's I don't want to say all the other executives. Let's say specifically this executive who says, because Josh Allen did get a number 1 overall vote by one of these executives, and that's also crazy because you can't make a realistic argument that he's better than Mahomes. I don't care even if it was the Bills GM voting for Josh Allen. Like, you just can't make an argument. But to this executive, and to any executive that wants to be anonymous, quote number 2, how many teams, and take this from a Broncos fan, would say, yeah, I definitively want our quarterback over Josh Allen? Think about it. And Josh, and this is why I said when I'm going to do top 10 situations later today, is because it's not just who you are, how talented you are, how good you are, your division. There's so many factors that go into how great and your performance on the field. Who's your coach? Who's your offensive coordinator or head coach and then offensive coordinator? What's your schedule like that year? What weather are you playing in? Like, there's all these different factors that, yes, we expect the great ones to play great regardless, but we all acknowledge, as great as Mahomes is, it's really nice he got Andy Reid. It's really nice he had Tyreek Hill to start his career. It's really nice he has Travis Kelce. A lot of us really like Jalen Hurts. It's really nice that he had Jason Kelce to start his career. It's really nice that they got him A.J. Brown. It's really nice that, like, Philly had structure, a team, so he wasn't coming in to this normal situation that young, great quarterbacks come into, where it's normally a shit show because you're a high pick. So Allen has a coach who I don't know if a lot of people have McDermott that highly ranked. We know he's a competent coach and he's a good coach, but I don't know if people would say he's one of the elite coaches in the NFL. And we know what an elite coach can do because most people don't like Brock Purdy, and we all acknowledge Kyle Shanahan as an elite coach because he got to the Super Bowl with him and Jimmy Garoppolo. So we don't think he has an elite coach. Stephon Diggs is a great receiver, but I don't think most people consider Stephon Diggs in the Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, like that A1 receiver tier. And now he doesn't even have Stephon Diggs. And last year you could see the way that relationship dissolved. Like, there's all these other factors. And despite that, he still won his division 4 years in a row. Despite that, he still got into the playoffs. Despite that, he still led the league in touchdowns over the last 4 years. So how many, to just fans out there and to this executive, how many of you would confidently take your quarterback over Josh Allen? Because to me, there's only 3 teams that it's even a conversation. Obviously, the Chiefs aren't taking him over Mahomes. And I think the Ravens with Lamar, and I think the Bengals with Joe Burrow. And I'm probably overrating this guy, but I think everybody's fallen in love with him, including myself. Maybe CJ Stroud. And that's only because there's such a high potential considering how great he was off the bat. And even that's kind of situational because part of CJ Stroud being this great this early is there's potential with the salary cap and roster improvements and stuff like that he could theoretically be even better and your team could be even better versus Josh was already paid. But how many of you are honestly taking your quarterback over Josh Allen? So like when he comes out and he says he's overrated, how is he overrated? Besides Mahomes, there's an argument with him and any other quarterback in the league, and he wins 99% of the arguments. Tier 1 is Mahomes. We understand that. Tier 0, if we want to say Mahomes is tier 0, cool. Tier 1 is Allen, Burrow, Lamar. And then, and you're not discussing, if you're one of those 4 quarterbacks and you're one of those 4 teams, you're not discussing with a team with a quarterback who is tiered below you. With, like I said, the one exception being CJ Stroud because of how great he was off the bat as a rookie. So, let's stop the overrated stuff. And I'm not even like Josh Allen's biggest supporter or anything like that, but let's stop the overrated stuff. Man, there's a lot to talk about today. We got the All-Star game coming up here pretty shortly, so that'll be fun. Shout out to baseball. Hopefully they take my idea. Probably won't. We got some Brandon Auyiuk stuff. He just requested a trade today, as well as it is Tuesday, so it's Team Tuesday. Got that to talk about. And as I've been saying, we have our top 10 QB situations. That'll be really fun. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily.
Yeah. Spence. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going?
This Celtics team is just better than the Mavericks. Look, the Mavericks have had a wonderful season. I said this last week, and there's no way to disregard or count out how great of a season it's been. But the reality is, the Mavs were a 5 seed. They were down 20 to the Clippers. They lost. They kept bringing on the telecast how many times they lost game 1, but then they rebounded. This team, while they are on a hot streak because their best player is currently playing some of the best basketball of his life, that works when it's comparable. It works when you're right there with the Clippers, or you're right there with the Oklahoma City Thunder, or you're right there with the Minnesota Timberwolves. And those were all 50-win teams. They all had great seasons in their own rights. But the Timberwolves were young. The Thunder were young. The Clippers, well, they're the Clippers. We've been waiting for years for the Clippers to figure it out. This Celtics team is just better than the Mavericks. This Celtics team, and we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate you guys for joining in today. So, the theme of this block is disgruntled. It's great, right? You got to make little themes. You got to make it clever. You got to make it catchy. It's content creation. Get with the program. Disgruntled is our theme, right? So, the first one, I don't think is a really big story, but I do think it fits the theme of disgruntled very well. And the second part of this block is a much bigger story, in my opinion. So let's start with a disgruntled guy in the NBA. So he's since come out and said he said something different, which whether you want to believe him or not, that's your own call. Most people try to put out the fire, especially if they see something is trending online, them talking negatively. But Jalen Brown was spotted. He was at the Summer League game. Shout out to him. He was there with his, we assume to be girlfriend, as well as Angel Reese. And he was caught, people that are lip readers, saying, I don't think Bronny's a pro. Now, first off, he's not wrong. Like right now, Bronny's not a pro. Bronny is a G League type player. He's a developmental player. Even JJ Redick, who was also at the game, the coach of the Lakers, when he had a chance to sit there and he was talking to a reporter, and he's like, yeah, Bronny is kind of our face of our developmental program, but we understand that's where he is right now. He's in the developmental part of the Lakers program. Cool. So even his own head coach doesn't think he's a pro currently. But it's different when your head coach says something versus if another player says something, right? But like I said, the theme is disgruntled. And if you're Jalen Brown, who's very publicly, even though he's trying to dismiss it, going through why isn't he on the USA team? And Jalen Brown's very outspoken. He's very well-spoken, so be very clear. Those two things can be true. You can be very well-spoken and outspoken, and he is both, about why he's not on the USA men's team. And there has been some shots at Nike, as well as some other stuff that's been said. So he is, he feels it. And he's probably the best player that's not there. Even an Embiid, who ended the season hurt, Kawhi, who actually played, but ended the season hurt, and actually came back to USA, but then left again. So Jalen's probably the best player that's in the NBA that's not currently there. And when they went to get a replacement, once Kawhi was gone, they got his teammate. And so there's even some of this feel, I'm not going to speak for Jalen Brown, I'm not going to try to read his mind, but to the public perception is that, he's upset because Tatum, who also just won a title, is one of the faces of USA basketball right now. Well, why didn't he recommend Jalen Brown to come on? They got Derek White, so you would think Jason Tatum would have some pull with that. And if I'm disgruntled or I'm irritated or I'm upset with that because I feel like there is powers that be that are preventing me from doing something that potentially maybe none of us really know, how much does Jalen Brown want to be a part of USA men's basketball? Maybe that was a dream of his growing up, and he feels like the powers that be, and USA basketball does get political at times, they're preventing him from doing that. So then he sees Bronny, who, and I don't have a problem with that, I'm going to make sure I reference that every single time. Nepotism happens, connections happen, networking is a thing. He feels like Bronny is in a position unfairly or unjustly, that he didn't earn being the 55th pick in the draft. His dad got him there. He didn't earn what he had. His dad's got an agent who hired him and then represents his son and basically forced his way to the Lakers. So if I feel like I'm getting slighted by USA basketball, or I'm getting slighted by Nike or the powers that be, and I see Bronny, a player who he's clearly better than, and if you're ever in or around, if you're ever in an athletic space or around athletes, when you know you're better than someone at the sport you both play or the thing that you both compete in, it's kind of triggering when you see them get something. Like, if you ever really been around athletes, they do take a level of offense to, well, I'm better than this guy, so why does he almost essentially, like, it sounds condescending, but like, why does he have anything that I don't have if I'm better than him? You even see like old NBA guys talk, and they're like, well, I know I could bust this dude's ass, so why are you guys even talking about him in the same breath as me? So Jalen Brown knows he's better than Bronny. He's a bigger, stronger athlete than Bronny. He's a champion, all this other stuff. He knows he's better. And so he feels like, well, I'm better. I should be on the USA men's basketball team. Instead, I'm at the Summer League, and I'm watching a guy, specifically Bronny, who I'm better than, and I don't really feel should be here, and he only got here because his dad and the powers that be put him there. I'm not going to say whether that's right or wrong. Jalen Brown's entitled to his own opinion. Like I said, at the end of the day, he's valid. Like, again, J.J. Redick, the Lakers coach, said Bronny is a developmental player. So he's not going to play right off the bat. He's not a pro, quote unquote. He is going to be a G leaguer who gets practice, works on his shot, does all these things. JJ said, yes, there's some stuff that he does well that we like already. He's got a feel for the game. He's a good defender. He's better athletically than, most people think. And that's all good. But he's not a pro yet. And now, And so the rest of us just kind of got to play out. But I totally understand. If you're Jalen Brown and you're disgruntled and you're upset because you're not on Team USA, yeah, I probably am going to look at, we do this in life. If I'm down on my luck, it's really easy for me to be mad at the rich kid who I feel like had every opportunity, still has every advantage, and I feel like, well, you haven't actually done it. You're only here because of what your parents did prior to you, and that's why you're in this position. Versus if I feel like I had to, quote unquote, do everything by myself. And the reality is most of us never really do anything completely by ourselves. Those are very few and far between as far as actual people. But yeah, I get why Jalen Brown would be disgruntled. I get why he would say that about him. Because A, it's true as far as him not being a pro. And B, I'm irritated. I'm disgruntled. I'm mad. I'm upset. This guy has something that I don't feel like he should have. And I don't have something that I feel like I should have. So, that's how it goes. Transitioning from an NBA disgruntled player to a disgruntled NFL player. Brandon Auyiuk this morning, after an offseason of where's he going to play? Are they going to get a contract done? He officially has requested a trade this morning, and we'll see what happens. Now, before anybody jumps out the gun and starts going, oh, Ayuk's going to go here, Ayuk's going to do this. Doing this close to training camp, the 49ers can kind of just look at you and go, all right, bet. You don't show up, we're just going to fine you. And they'll play that game, and they can play that game much longer than him. They have much deeper pockets than him as a franchise versus one athlete. Not pocket watching, but that's just the reality of it. Also, multiple 49ers, including a receiver not even a full 2 years ago, just did the same thing. Debo said, I'm going to hold out, and then he officially requested a trade, and then the Niners paid him. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that this is going to go exactly as that went or go as smoothly as that went, but that was Debo's reality. He requested a trade. He was upset. He was disgruntled. He wanted a contract. He didn't get it when he initially wanted it. There was an argument about how much he should make because he was this kind of like receiver running back hybrid, and he wanted to be paid as an overall player versus they only wanted to pay him for, maybe just his receiving yards. So Ayuk's in a slightly different situation as far as the way they view production, but because that roster's so talented, McCaffrey's a great receiving back. Kittle's already been paid. He's a great tight end. Debo's now been paid. He's a receiver. So even though Auyiuk might feel like he is in that tier one of receivers, and he was an all-pro last year, the Niners don't necessarily need that because an all-pro receiver in their offense is still going to get you around 70 to 80 catches, 7 to 10 touchdowns, which is really, really good, but not and great, but not tier one all-pro high-end top of the market money. Now, he's only making, I think it's $14 million this year, and so maybe they come to a justification as far as meeting in the middle. But if I'm Brandon Auyiuk, the team that I think I've heard him connected to, but I think would be just a really bad idea, is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Why would you want to go to Pittsburgh? I just want to make sure I say this correctly. If Brandon Auyiuk, I'm talking to you, if you ever hear this, and I doubt you do, enjoy the quality of life that you've had so far, and don't necessarily bend a knee to it, but understand it. You have Debo Samuel on one side. You have Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. You have George Kittle at tight end. These other guys who demand attention, who help you get open, who help your progress, even a Jawan Jennings. You have a Kyle Shanahan who's maybe 1A, 1B, the best offensive play caller in the sport. You have all of these things. You're winning games every year. Excuse me. You're going to NFC Championship games. You're going to the Super Bowl. You've got guys on defense, and Nick Bosa, Fred Warner. You've been a part of a really good culture, a lot of winning. Have you seen Devontae Adams on receiver? First clip that's going viral everywhere. Devontae saying, I got to get out of here, man. They're trying to kill me. I'm getting hit every single play. They're overthrowing him. He's getting pissed off. He's throwing his helmet on the sideline. And Devontae's has never been seen as like a quote-unquote prima donna receiver. Well, it helps that the first several years of his career, he had Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers doesn't really put you in positions to get hit like that. Aaron Rodgers throws and he is accurate. He gets you touchdowns. He gets you your 1,000+ yards. He gets you your 100 catches. And Davante Adams looked miserable. Now, that's a TV show. It's obviously they're trying to hit certain points, make it a little more dramatic. So I'm not going to say Davante totally hates his situation. But that's clear frustration. The quality of life he had in Green Bay is not the same quality of life he is having currently in Vegas. And he wanted to go to Vegas. That was the extra, that's where he's from. And originally he wanted to partner up with Derek Carr, but it has not worked out for him. So you need to keep that in mind. There is a laundry list of receivers who have gotten paid, but they go to a team that can afford them, but isn't competitive yet. You can take another Green Bay receiver. We just talked about Davante Adams. Greg Jennings went to Miami and to the public basically disappeared. He was a all-pro, very well-known receiver when he was with Aaron Rodgers. Then he went to Miami. Never the same. Sorry, Minnesota. He went to Miami afterwards. But it was like, just because you got paid does not mean you're going to have the same quality of life that you had. And that should be in your consideration. Now, I think the fun scenario, and this I think potentially will change the dynamic of receivers, especially once teams start, for teams that end up acquiring two great receivers and it's almost impossible, nor is it usually worth it to pay two great high-end receivers. Like, no one wants to have $200 million receivers on their team. Him to Washington is interesting because everything gets faster, right? And once something is done right once, everybody tries to do it, and everybody actually tries to speed up the process. I've said this a bunch. Rookie quarterbacks throughout NFL history, they never played. Then they slowly started to play, and there was a handful of them. And then Joe Flacco, Matt Ryan, 2008, broke everything open, and now pretty much all rookies play week one. All rookie quarterbacks. If you're drafted high, if you're a first-round guy, you are going to play. Now it's weird or the exception, or we almost judge you because you can't play week one, even though that was the norm for 80-plus years. So most teams, so we've gone from rookie quarterbacks not playing to now they can play. And once you feel like you have the guy, another trend is, okay, get him a receiver. See, can he take that next step if we get him the big-time receiver? Josh Allen's a great example. Josh Allen got Stephon Diggs. He went from, and Josh Allen's a little weird because he didn't have a great rookie year, but once they found out second year, it's like, okay, he can play. Then they got him Stephon Diggs, and it's like, boom, we're at another level. And that happens. So now what if we take Jaden Daniels and we just assume he can play? They took he's second overall pick, so he's expected to be their franchise quarterback in Washington. And what if they just say, hey, you know what? We'll give Brandon Auyiuk the $30 million, $35 million a year. He's probably not going to get Jefferson money, but we'll give him all that. And we'll give him that because we're just going to pair him with Jaden Daniels off rip. And we're going to see if this just works. Because we believe in Jaden Daniels and we know Auyiuk is great. That, I think, is interesting. Because then you're going to create this scenario of if you are a team who's got a top 5, top 10 quarterback, and he's a rookie, and then you have other teams in the league, and it always happens, where two great receivers end up on the same team, can't pay them both for extensive periods of time. I know Miami currently is, but that's because they haven't paid Tua. What happens if you ship off an Auyiuk to them and you just pair him with the rookie quarterback right off the bat? What happens in a year or two if Miami decides to pay Tua? Do they re-sign Tyreek? Do they let Waddle go, trade Waddle away to a incoming top 5, top 10 pick team? That, I think, is genuinely interesting for the sport. That has potential to be like, oh, this could be something. So, like I said, disgruntled. That was the theme of this block. Jalen Brown disgruntled with Bronny. Feels like he should be on U.S. men's basketball team. He's not. It is what it is, in my opinion, but I don't blame him. And Auyiuk, I get it. You want to get paid, but don't also forget your quality of life. But Washington is interesting. This is HardFoul Radio. We will be back momentarily.
Yeah. Spence. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going?
Paul George to the Sixers. I think this should matter. I think it does matter for the optimism of the fan base. They also just re-signed Tyrese Maxey. But I also think the reality is Paul George to the Sixers, all it does is slightly change the odds of how much they'll lose by if Joel Embiid still goes down. Do not be mistaken. This is still a Joel Embiid or bust team that the Sixers have. If Embiid is healthy, he's there for the playoffs. They have a chance because he is that talented. He also has to perform, which was his problem last year. I understand it last year was more nicks and bruises versus him outright being out. But Paul George, great player, coming off a career high shooting from three. But the reality is the Sixers are only going as far as Embiid, and that's with even the emergence and how great Max. Paul George to the Sixers, I think this should matter. I think it does matter for the optimism of the fan base. They also just re-signed Tyrese Maxey. But I also think the reality is Paul George to the Sixers, all it does is slightly change the odds of how much they'll lose by if Joel Embiid still goes down. Do not be mistaken. This is still a Joel Embiid or bust team that the Sixers have. If Embiid is healthy, he's there for the playoffs. They have a chance because he is that talented. He also has to perform, which was his problem last year. I understand it last year was more nicks and bruises versus him outright being out. But Paul George, great player, coming off a career high shooting from three. But the reality is the Sixers are only going as far as Embiid, and that's with even the emergence and how great Max. Paul George to the Sixers.
And we are back. I think we just ran that one around twice. My apologies. So, it's Tuesday, which means it's Team Tuesday, meaning, no, I talk baseball, I understand, it's All-Star game, but my team's not doing very well, so you're just going to have to deal with that. Not talking about them. Sorry. Let's start here. Let's start in football. I've been seeing a lot of, can Sean Payton figure it out? Sean Payton's washed. Sean Payton is a Drew Brees merchant. Sean Payton, and then so everybody got more upset because they're like, oh, Sean Payton thinks he's a genius because he's like, oh, he thought Bo Nix was the guy when it clearly was, not. Do they not understand Denver where they picked that Denver would have had to either mortgage, potentially put Pat Surtain up to be available and or mortgage several drafts to try to move up because the reality was the top quarterbacks were never going to be available to them, or you mortgage your future for J.J. McCarthy, which people would also say is stupid. So, but I've heard a lot of this, and I think some of the criticism for Sean is valid. I do think there is things that I wish he did differently or did better, but again, I've said this a bunch. I'm not a head coach. I'm not in the front office. Some of this stuff, I just do believe, I know this is going to sound crazy, I believe these guys know what they're doing sometimes. I believe that they're smarter than me sometimes. I believe that they're capable, that they know more about the sport and the profession that they are paid millions of dollars for than the guy sitting in his room talking into a microphone. I know, it's crazy. I was listening to some guys in sports radio, and I was like, they kept saying, remember it took Joe Gibbs a year. Like, Joe Gibbs is a Hall of Fame coach, obviously with the Hogs and the Washington team in the 80s. And then when he came back, it took him about a year, and then he was back on it. And he was back to feeling like he was a great coach, reacclimated, reaccustomed. And a lot of them said, you know what, I feel like Bill Belichick's going to do the same thing. Is Bill lost Tom, didn't truly figure out how to navigate a world without Tom Brady because there were so many little things, take away the talent or the play. There were so many little things Tom did in terms of his preparation, the way you could coach him, his feel for the game, and just the intensity he brought every day. There were some of those things that Bill just probably didn't realize how lucky he was that he was paired up with this guy. Disregard the talent. And that they think, there's been some talk going around potentially him and Dak Prescott next year. And if they regroup, Dak has some of those similar qualities, and Bill will get right back on it, and he'll be good again. Good/great again. So why can't we have that same logic with Sean Payton? Why can't we look at Sean Payton and go, you know what? First year back in the league. Let's even say this. Let's go full story. Sean, I think, realized it was different play one, and I think it was intentionally different play one. Denver starts off last year, fake onside kick. What Sean Payton most known for, fake onside kick in the Super Bowl. Doesn't work. Denver ends up getting really bad field position, which that week one game they pretty much only lost to the field position. And that was kind of Sean going like, all right, cool. It's different. New team, new opportunity. It's not even the same stuff I got to do in New Orleans. He then tried really hard to make Russell Wilson Drew Brees. Russell Wilson's not Drew Brees. But even with Russ not being Drew Brees, Russ was, as someone who's watched every Russell Wilson game the last 2 years, please send help, Russell was significantly better last year than he was the year prior. Now, you could say that's not saying much, or the bar was really low, which is valid. But it doesn't take away from the fact Sean got the most out of a guy who's pretty much on the end of his career. And that'll be really apparent when we see Russ this year in Pittsburgh, who's got a defensive coach. And as great as Mike Tomlin is and never had a losing season, we all have great respect for Mike Tomlin. But we're going to see how Russ is in Pittsburgh. And then you're going to compare him last year to Denver, and you're going to really start to go, okay, Sean still has it. Sean Payton's coaching resume is really weird. We all know it's hard to say he's an offensive genius right now because so many more guys have come in and different innovations. But Sean was an offensive genius for his time. He also still had 3 straight losing seasons, and that's with Drew Brees as his quarterback. But he also got a Super Bowl, multiple NFC championship games, and if you ask Saints fans, should have been 2 Super Bowls. That one against the Rams. Ask a Saints fan how they feel about that. So we know Sean has success. And we know Sean has success even on the fly because we know the year where Brees got hurt, where they had to use Jameis Winston and Teddy Bridgewater, and he's had success with these other guys. So we know there is something there. There is some proof of concept. He can do this even without Drew Brees. And when you're an offensive guy, I think it's a little bit harder to get immediately adjusted. We all love DeMeco Ryans in Houston. I do too. Big fan. When I bring up my top 10 situations, trust me, I'm really big fan of DeMeco Ryans, really big fan of CJ Stroud. But a defensive guy in any sport, a lot of defense is effort. There's only really a handful of defensive coordinators that are truly stood out because of scheme. And I'm talking about true scheme. I'm not talking about the Ryan family, Buddy Ryan, when he just learned how to blitz in the 46 defense. It's like, well, that's not really that complicated. That was, I'm just going to stack the line of scrimmage, run everybody up there, and I got Mike Singletary. Like, what do you want to do? Dick LeBeau for the Steelers for years. It was this very complicated, intricate defense. Guys were going all over. He had nose tackles dropping into coverage. Troy Polamalu was blitzing. It was this truly intellectual defense. But a lot of defenses are, can I teach effort? Can I teach hustle? Can I teach energy to a degree? And can I get these guys to run 3 or 4 really basic concepts, but perfect them? Tampa 2 is not some mind-blowing, super intricate, super hard-to-learn defense. But, rest in peace, they perfected it in Tampa. I forget the defensive coordinator's name off the top of my head. I apologize. He just passed the other day. The Ravens with Ray Lewis. It wasn't this ultra unique, complex scheme. It was, we figured out how to run a 3-4, and we have potentially the greatest linebacker ever and potentially the greatest safety ever. And they held it down, and they perfected this defense. the Legion of Boom, who most people probably consider the last truly all-time defense. They ran a cover 3. It wasn't this overly complex thing. So defensive guys can adjust easier because, not trying to be disrespectful, but it's just easier to teach defense than it is offense, especially if you're trying to teach something like a McVay, a Shanahan, a Sean Payton, where they're trying to get these schemes, formations, there's multiple play calls, there's adjusting in and out of each of these things. Like, there's just a lot more that goes into that. And then you have the frustration part of year one, which is some plays never really, this is why Sean got the very famous scene when he was yelling at Russell Wilson. He was upset because Russ is supposed to be, your quarterback is supposed to be that intellectual piece that maybe your second receiver doesn't quite remember he's supposed to be, but your quarterback helps gets him in the right position. You know, maybe your tight end's not quite in on the game, your backup tight end's not quite in the game plan, but your quarterback helps guide him. Russ couldn't even figure out the offense. And so there was a lot of things Sean would see and the offensive coordinator would see and the coaching staff would see, and it was like, Russ can't see shit. I'm not even making a short joke. So, yes, is it fair to be critical or have speculation about Sean Payton heading into this? Yes, into year two. But I also believe there's just as much room for optimism. If Bo Nix, who, I'm not even saying Bo Nix has to be great or even be great as a rookie, but what if Bo Nix is just smarter than Russ is at this stage in his career? What if Bo Nix just picks up the offense better than Russ did? What if Bo Nix is just, I don't know, just decent? Is that not an upgrade from what Russell Wilson was? Is that not an improvement for Sean Payton and his potential schemes? Is that not like, those are things that should be looked at and go, oh, this is clearly going to be better. Because your bar is so low because at times, even though they had the win streak last year, Russ never really looked great. Yes, he had better stats at a certain point during that win streak, but never looked great. That's why there was the whole the quote-unquote controversy with the should you bench him, should you not. It's like they knew they didn't want to hold on to Russ anymore. And they had a huge contract, obviously, so they had to play him to some degree. But after that, it was like, look, man, he doesn't get this. Sean now was in year two. The receivers, they pretty much all brought back. So these guys are going to be more comfortable with the offense. The O-line's all back. They're going to be more comfortable with the offense. And if Bo Nix is just smarter than Russ or better than Russ, there's mad room for optimism here. And you're in a division where realistically, like, the Chiefs are obviously going to win the division. They're the best team in the division by a mile. But you could argue they're better than the Chargers, who you could say are going to have their own potential struggles year one with a Jim Harbaugh. The Raiders, this is their full year under Antonio Pierce. We don't know what that's going to quite look like. Again, Pierce started off strong, but it's a defense, it's a mentality, a culture thing that he was able to build immediately. But we don't know how it's going to look offensively in year two. We don't know how it's going to look defensively in year two. So Denver has a real chance here. Not saying Sean Payton's above criticism or above critiquing or above, hey, can he get it done? But I think for every reason you say, oh, I don't think he can get it done, I think there's just as many reasons for yes, he can. Because he had that win streak. He had Denver playing better. He had Russ playing better. And that was year one, which for most coaches coming back is the hardest transition. We're going to see a lot, and I think Jim Harbaugh is going to be a great coach, and I'm terrified that he's in my division, or the division of the team that I root for. But the reality is year one, if there's any year to get him, quote unquote, it's year one. And he's got a great quarterback by most people's accounts. Now let's go over to the one that I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here. I've talked about this a bunch already. How come, and even Pelicans fans, I got to ask you, how come BI is the subject of all the trade talks, but CJ is just not? I know CJ hit 200 threes last year, and I also know if you watch the Pelicans enough, it was frustrating as hell because some games he hit 6 or 7, and some games he hit 1, and he would still take 15, 16 shots. And then Zion's out here telling him, I want you to be aggressive. No, maybe be a little less aggressive. And I'm seeing all these hypothetical lineups, and it's like DeJounte Murray, CJ. For those that think that BI is untradeable now, B.I., Zion, and then the rookie, Aves Missy. Why are we moving Herb Jones to the bench? Like, Pelicans ownership, Pelicans front office, David Griffin. I'm not even saying you necessarily have to trade CJ right now. But if you're going to, and this also is up to Willie Green, if your starting lineup involves putting Herb Jones on the bench, you messed up. There is such a thing as super culture guys, super glue guys. We started the show off with Jalen Brunson. A really, really good player, a clear star, but such a super culture guy that he's worth whatever money, and I understand he took the discount, but he's worth the money. B.I. and Herb Jones, who currently are playing on less than what they could, are super culture guys. Those two and Jose Alvarado are, I love Zion, he's the best player on the team, but those three are the glue of the New Orleans Pelicans. Those three are the heartbeat of the team. Those three, and it's why it sucks so much to see like Najee and Lance get traded, even though I love the DeJounte trade, but it was still rough. Or Najee left in free agency, Lance was traded. But those were your glue guys. Those were the guys who filled in for 10, 11 minutes, were playing hard, got the crowd into the game. You cannot destroy your locker room, especially when they're productive. Herb Jones is a first-team all-defense, only guard doing first-team all-defense. Go check my Twitter. And B.I. is still getting you 22, 23 points a game on the, I saw it on Twitter, it's the, he's taking the toughest shots in the league, and he was like the best in shot creation last year. So it's like, he's still in the prime of his career. He came back to, yeah, he was clearly not healthy against the Thunder. I get it. Didn't look good. Lou Dort, blah, blah, blah. But you can't destroy the locker room that you've built, which is one of the best locker rooms in the NBA, by getting rid of B.I. before CJ or putting Herb Jones on the bench. Let's also not forget B.I. and Zion do not score what they could truly score because they're playing with each other, and they were asked to be these point forward-esque type of players. So yeah, Zion was only getting you 21, 22 a game when he could probably get you 25, 26. B.I. was getting 21, 22 points a game when he could probably score 25, 26 because they were deferring. They were picking it up on defense as far as their effort level. They were asked to do more things besides just score. So don't hold it against them in terms of being a less productive, quote unquote, by a stat sheet perspective because you asked them to do something else. Like, this is, I believe this wholeheartedly. You could destroy, New Orleans has done an incredible job post Anthony Davis. I know people are talking about if B.I. does get traded or he is moved, then they have nobody left from the Anthony Davis trade. I don't care. The culture, the locker room, the player, like, they've done so good these last couple of years. Please don't destroy it. Please don't destroy it. And if you're going to trade anyone, trade CJ. Please. Just trade CJ. It's not that hard. Trade CJ. This is a very depressed HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily.
Yeah. It's facts. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going?
Whether or not Michael Jordan has a Defensive Player of the Year award or not does not change his actual greatness as a defender. People that need stats, accolades, what the record books looks like to justify how great a player is, You're just wrong. Otherwise, you would think Wilt's the greatest player ever, or you would think Kareem isn't the greatest player ever conversation. We have eyes. We've seen it. Whether you're a Mike's the GOAT kind of person, you're a LeBron's the GOAT kind of person, you're a Kobe's the GOAT person, maybe you're a Paul George is the GOAT person. Yeah, Paul George is the GOAT. People probably not so much. But we have eyes. We've seen how great these individuals are. We don't need stats, records, achievements. Those things are cool, and it's great for the individual person. But those things aren't really needed to determine who's the better player, who's truly great. Mike was a great defensive player with or without a award. Come on now. Stop the bullshit. And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate you guys who have been here for the whole time. Thank you so much, Justin, really quick. So, I don't think this is controversial, but it always needs to be said because it's the reality of life. Generally, nobody's a one-man show. And so, because nobody's really a one-man show, even if you have these TV shows or networks that you watch and you're like, oh, well, there's a clear star of the show, generally, the supporting cast is always more important than the star. That's just the way it goes. Even people, I think a lot of people get misconstrued, especially with YouTube, when it started to take off, is they see only the person on camera and go, oh, well, a channel doesn't work without them. But then when you really start to see these bigger YouTube channels and you're like, oh, you know, like Mr. Beast, as big as he is, he's the #1 YouTuber. He has a huge team, a lot of production guys who are editing, recording stuff. Like, it's not just him. I'm a big fan of Philip DeFranco. And if you look at Philip DeFranco when he first started to where he is now, there's such a huge quality improvement. There's such a huge, it's just a massive difference from what you saw back then to what you see now. And that's because of the situation, and that is because of the supporting cast. I said earlier in the show, quarterback right now, there's a clear gap. So much so that we have to almost think about the position differently because Mahomes is in his own tier. Like, Mahomes could have a bad season next year, and I don't think this is possible, but he could have a bad year next year, and I think he is still in his own tier. And then, like I said, he's in tier 0, and then the next set of guys are Burrow, Lamar, Mahomes, and I'm a huge CJ fan, but we'll see where we rank him. But because of that, what I think we have to evaluate quarterbacks now is on their situation. So it's not just, is it, top 5 best quarterbacks, top 4 best quarterbacks, top 10 best quarterbacks. We need to see what are the best quarterback situations. I'm a big Colin Cowherd fan, and he does this about once a year where he goes, I'm going to pick divisions just based on quarterbacks. And he goes, I'm going to give you the best quarterback in every division, and I'll say that's who wins. And while that's still probably valid, it's not how I think we need to look at it with this current iteration of the NFL because of Mahomes creating this massive gap. So let's start here. These are the top 10 quarterback situations. I'm going to go 1 through 10. So remember, this is quarterback situations. Best quarterback situation in the NFL. Let's go 10 through 1. Let's be dramatic. At number 10, Justin Herbert. Now, most people probably have Herbert rated higher as an individual by himself, but the reality is he's gone through several offensive coordinators in his first couple years in the NFL. He has one really bad playoff experience, doesn't have a whole lot of winning in general. The receivers that he's played his entire career with, they're not there. Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, they're all gone. But even so, and the individual quarterback's talent does matter, he's talented enough that him and Jim Harbaugh, this I believe is going to work. Now, I think this year is going to be a slightly rough year. We talked about coaches in their first year reacclimating to the current NFL, getting back into the pros. That can be its own adjustment. But Herbert, Harbaugh, the O-line with Rashawn Slater being healthy, this should work. This is a top 10 quarterback situation in the NFL. Excuse me. Justin Herbert at number 10. At number 9, Caleb Williams. Funny enough, he has one of Justin Herbert's old weapons in Keenan Allen. if you look at what the Bears did, and I don't like hyperbole statements, but this is one that works, which is Caleb Williams probably has the best situation for a number 1 overall pick in NFL history. It is insane because the fact the Bears were not actually terrible to get the number 1 overall pick. They traded with Carolina, and that's how they got it. He has receivers. He has a defense. I think the only thing that I don't love for him, or I would actually have the situation even rated higher, is that I wish he had an offensive head coach. If Caleb Williams had an offensive head coach, this might be a top 5, top 6 quarterback situation. We know he has the potential to be a generational quarterback talent. We know what Keenan Allen's going to be a number 3. Keenan Allen has spent his entire career being a 1. And while maybe he's not as good as he was 4 or 5 years ago, he now gets to be a 3. The Bears have multiple 1,000-yard receivers, a really good tight end. The O-line should be better. The defense is there. 7-win team that adds the number 1 overall draft pick, the best quarterback in several years, if not the best quarterback since Andrew Luck to a lot of people. So Caleb Williams, even though he's a rookie, number 9 quarterback situation. Number 8, Tua. Most people don't have Tua as a top 10 quarterback, and that's fine. I get that. But if you look at his coach, who's one of the best play callers in the NFL, Mike McDaniel, he still has Tyreek Hill, maybe the most explosive and dangerous player in football, and Jalen Waddle, and Mostert at running back. Like I've said, there's 2 teams in the NFL that I truly, truly believe could be plug and play at quarterback. And that's not to diminish their quarterback, but that's to show how good the front office and the coaching staff has done at constructing a roster. And Miami and San Francisco are those 2 teams. So even if you don't think Tua, you might not think Tua's better. Most people don't think Tua's better than Herbert. And a lot of people would take Caleb Williams, even as a rookie, never having played a snap, they would take him over Tua. But the reality is I get Tua, these receivers, this play calling. There's a reason why they scored 70 points, and it's not just because my Broncos sucked. Like, this is a great team, a great offense, a great situation. Maybe not a top 10 quarterback, but a top 10 quarterback situation, Tua at number 8. These next 3 are all based on talent. These are just the most talented, and we've been talking about them kind of periodically throughout the show. Lamar at number 7. Lamar is so talented, and he's with the perfect coach. Lamar does not look like Lamar if he is drafted to almost 20 to 30 other NFL teams. But him, John Harbaugh, what they've done with this roster, acclimating the offense, bringing in, moving on from Greg Roman. We've seen him win 2 MVPs. He is, like I said, Mahomes is in a tier by himself, but that next tier, him, Burrow, Allen, they're all great, and it's just a matter of the pieces they have around him, which Lamar's pieces he's adjusted because they've been moved because some guys who were there at the beginning of his career are no longer there now, but he is just an all-world talent, absolutely top 10 quarterback, top 10 QB situation, Lamar Jackson. Number 6. Yeah, we're number 6. Josh Allen. Now, Allen would have been higher than the next guy, but the only difference here is Allen just lost his number 1. Stephon Diggs no longer on the team, but the reality is Josh Allen is still probably going to win his division again. The reality is Josh Allen is still a touchdown machine. Yes, he throws interceptions. Yes, he fumbles, but there's an argument to be made. He is just as good, if not better, of a touchdown, of a throwing, running quarterback, even than Lamar Jackson. Like, Lamar has speed that Josh can't keep up with, but Allen's accuracy, his ability to run over guys, jump over guys, he is still in the prime of his career athletically. Josh Allen, and if, like I said, if he had kept his receivers, this would be higher on my list. Which means it's number 5, Joe Burrow. Now, Joe, we all know his only thing is health. That's really only setting him back. I like Zach Taylor, who's gotten a lot of respect from what I thought he was going to be to what he has turned out to be. I think he deserves a lot of credit, a lot of praise. He's been a extremely well-qualified NFL head coach. He's gotten to a Super Bowl. Any year Burrow's healthy, they've been at least AFC Championship. T. Higgins is probably going to play if he's disgruntled. They still have Jamar Chase. This is like I said, him and Allen I would have gone back and forth with, but the fact he got to keep his receivers, even if they're not totally happy with their contract situation, to me, that is the difference, and that's why Burrow comes in at number 5. At number 4, this is the one we're probably all a little too high on, but it's okay. I am drinking the Kool-Aid, and that is C.J. Stroud with the Houston Texans. D'Amico Ryans, C.J. Stroud, Nico Collins, just how we always say, or we've been saying since this era of rookie quarterbacks, when guys play right away, you pretty much know right off the bat. You know if your guy is it, and you pretty much know if your guy is not. Take away the team's success. If you just watch them throw the football and the way they play, it took the Houston Texans about 4 to 5 games to know C.J. Stroud is it, and it took the Carolina Panthers about 4 or 5 games to go, I don't know if Bryce Young is. So, Stroud, Ryan, I think this is a really wonderful combination. I think with some guys, they have such a commanding presence over the offense at the quarterback position that they do need a defensive head coach to kind of handle the other half of the team, and that's the vibe C.J. Stroud gives to me. Like I said, Caleb being a rookie, I would have preferred he had an offensive head coach, but CJ had such a strong presence, his leadership, the command of the offense, everything was just great right off the rip, a couple of games into his career, that I actually really like the combination of him and D'Amico Ryans, offensive quarterback, defensive head coach. I could be wrong on that one. That's probably the biggest swing, but hey, man, look. At number 3, it's Mahomes. Now, obviously, this is Mahomes, this is Reed, and it's like, why isn't this number 1? Well, because the reality is, if you look at a lot of the stuff the Chiefs do, Mahomes covers up a lot of it. Yes, Andy Reid we know is a brilliant play caller, but the brilliant play caller had a less explosive offense than he's ever had because he no longer has Tyreek Hill. He no longer has an in his prime Travis Kelce. He doesn't have the consistent running game that Mahomes had at the beginning of his career. Like, you can see certain things are starting to peel off from the Chiefs. 15 is just so great that he covers up a lot of it. You know, look at the Chiefs offseason. I've been saying this for weeks. If you look at the Kansas City Chiefs offseason, they've had players arrested. They've had issues. They've had to get rid of L'Jarius Sneed. There's all these things around him that are, to any other quarterback, would be falling apart. But because you have Mahomes and Reed specifically, this is the Super Bowl favorite. This is the current NFL dynasty. So, yes, Mahomes, if it was just quarterback, he's number 1, undisputed, no conversation. But if we're just doing top 10 quarterback situations, Mahomes comes in at number 3. Number 2, I think this one's underrated, Matthew Stafford. So Stafford, I think to a lot of people is in that top 6-7 range as far as quarterbacks. I don't know if we put him quite with, we obviously don't put him with Mahomes, don't put him with Burrow, Lamar, Allen, but I think a lot of people would have him right there. Him, CJ, some of the young guys coming up. But if you look at Stafford, McVay, now they have Nakua and Cooper Kupp. They always figure out a running game. Sean McVay figures out a way to make offensive lines work. The Rams are a sleeper team to get to the Super Bowl, and that's insane to think about considering, look at Matthew Stafford's first part of his career, and that's why I say you have to take situations in totality. No, nobody on this roster is as good as Megatron, but it doesn't matter because they have 2 receivers, tight ends that work, the O-line's good, their head coach is as good as anybody calling plays. And so Matthew Stafford, the number 2 quarterback situation in the NFL, which leaves us with number 1. And I know it's the best situation because most people don't even think the quarterback's all that good or he's just carried. And of course, I'm talking about Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers. Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, even if whether Ayuk's there or not, they got 2 rookie receivers. I know they just put the first rounder on a temporary injury list. Juwan Jennings, who had flashes last year, and a guy, it's either him or McVay, Reed. They're the top 3 offensive play callers in the NFL. Brock Purdy, like the 49ers have everything. Not just those weapons, but and then you have Trent Williams at left tackle. The totality of the team, that defense still has 3 or 4 all-pro guys. Like, come on now. Because most of you don't think Brock, and I think Brock Purdy is a good quarterback too. I think he's good to really good. Most people think he's just outright bad. He's totally carried by all these other supporting players, which is proof positive. Brock Purdy, the number one quarterback situation in the NFL. Man, it's been so much fun. I appreciate you guys as always. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back tomorrow. This is the show that values time. I value mine. You should value yours. All love. See you guys tomorrow.